Morning.
Good morning. Yes, for those of you who woke up so early to be here on a Saturday, thank you so much. If it wasn't my own presentation, I would not be here. So I'm amazed that all of you are here.
Okay, let me introduce the first presenter. This is our Sierra, and she's going to talk about, about what?
About
Trivial
hats
things.
in
Hats.
American politics.
Yes. No, yes.
And of course,
So, there we are. So now we know the topic, you know who I am. Now we can start. Okay. So, why are hats important? Why are hats important? Does anyone know?
Brains need some kind of cover.
Yes, you need to cover your brains. No, actually, so it's a fashion statement, right? It's important if you're going to lead a nation, you should be able to dress yourself, right? And then B, as every Russian knows, hats keep you from getting sick, right? How many times have you left the house and it's plus 12 and your grandmother's been like, oh, wait, where's your hat? And you're like, oh my God, it's fine, right? So hats are important both for, fashion, looking nice, and then also just functionality, right? So to start off my presentation, I thought I'd tell you a story about the 9th President of the United States. His name is William Henry Harrison. Okay, he was this is the dates that he was president for. How long was he president of the United States of America? 1 month. Why 1 month? What do you think happened?
Perhaps he died and he was re-elected.
He died. Oh, he died. Yes, he died. So, what is he wearing in this photo? Some sort of weird coat, but no hat. So, he was 68 years old when he was elected. Oh, come on. He was 68 years old when he was elected president, right, in 1841. In 1841, that's really old for someone in 1841. Normally people didn't live that long, right? And so when he was elected, there were some concerns about his health. Will he be strong enough to be an effective president, right? And so, in order to prove everyone that yes, indeed, he was a strong, manly man at 68 years old, he decided to go to his inaugurational speech in March, a very cold March day, without a coat and without a hat, to prove to everyone that he was healthy and strong. So, he had the longest speech in history. It was over 2 hours. And also, doing the other things that one does while becoming president, so meeting with people, being in a parade, all of that without a coat and a hat. So guess what happened?
It cost him his life.
2 weeks later, he caught a cold, right? And the cold turned into pneumonia, and he died. Hello. So, some people say, hello. Some people say that maybe it wasn't exactly not wearing a hat and a coat, because he did catch a cold about 2 or 3 weeks later. So maybe it wasn't related, some historians do say. But I like to think and remind you all that if you don't wear a hat, you will die, as this man demonstrated. There you go. I've only lived in Russia for a year, but I'm already turning into a bomber. Okay, so the next famous hat is Abraham Lincoln, okay? So his hat is called a stovepipe hat. It is essentially a type of top hat, okay? It was really, really quite tall, right? So it was 7 inches by 10 inches, right? So that's in centimeters, 17.78 centimeters, right? It was a big hat, okay? Yeah, this thing was huge, right? And so Abraham Lincoln was already a tall man, okay? He was 6'4", which I think in centimeters is like 194, 193, someone who's good at math? Yes? Sure. Okay, so somewhere around there. So he's already quite tall, right? With that hat, he was around 200 centimeters. So everyone knew where he was at all times. And I'm sure he did this on purpose, right? He is the President of the United States. He wants to be easily recognized. Also, what happened during his presidency?
He was killed in the theater, he was shot.
He was, and we'll get to that in a second. He was shot. He also was president during the Civil War. Yes? We all know that, remember that? Yeah. So he wanted to be sort of a recognizable figure, right? A sort of unifying figure in the midst of this Civil War, right? Some interesting facts about Abraham Lincoln and his stovepipe hat. It was famously battered. Do you know what battered means? It was famously very like worn and punched in. So it was like, kind of looked like this on the top, right? So not a very nice looking, clean hat. And people were like, why, if he's the President of the United States, does his hat look like he's stamped on it, right? But he actually did it on purpose because Abraham Lincoln wanted to be known as sort of a common man, right? As an everyday man of the people. And so top hats were quite expensive, right? You needed to own one because they were mandatory for formal occasions. But they're expensive. Most people could only afford one, maybe in their life, etc. And so even though he could afford new ones and nice ones being the president, he wanted to show that he was just like everybody else, that his hat got old and dirty as well. And just like everyone else, he didn't buy a new one every year, right? So it was done on purpose. All right, in addition, some other fun facts about his hat. So he used to carry important papers and documents in his hat. So he would take it, you'd roll it up, and you'd just put it on the inside of his hat. Put it on his head. Right? He didn't carry a briefcase, he carried a hat instead. Also, it was good because during the wartime, any secret documents would be literally on his body. So it was kept things safer. Although it didn't always keep him safe, this hat of his, because if he is 200 centimeters tall with this hat, it's the middle of a war, right? People know where he is, obviously. There are a few instances where he was almost shot because of the hat. One of those, he was riding kind of near-ish the White House, nearby, and a would-be assassin, someone that tried to kill him but didn't succeed, shot at him while he rode by, and it hit his hat and knocked it off. So he was fine, picked up his hat, and kept going. In another time, during the war, he was visiting a fort. And he was, looking at the soldiers there and things, and it wasn't very far away from the Confederate soldiers, and so he's kind of looking at the soldiers. And his advisors kept being like, take your hat off. You're literally on the fort walls, looking at enemy soldiers. What are you doing? Like, you're wearing a giant black hat that everyone knows it's your hat. He's like, it's fine, it's fine. Eventually, though, the soldiers saw his hat and started rapidly trying to fire at him. So then, of course, he had to take his hat off and go away, right? Because if you're wearing a giant black hat, people know who you are. All right, so this hat has 2 black bands. You can't see it very well in this photo, but it has 2 black hat bands. So this is called a hat band, right? This ribbon here, okay? So he has 2 of them. One is your standard hat band, so it's going to be about this thickness, maybe a little bit smaller, right? And the other one is very small, very thin, and it's a black ribbon, right? And black ribbons, what do those normally signify?
Mourning.
Mourning. So it's a mourning ribbon. His 3-year-old son died of typhoid fever, right, in 1862 or 1863, somewhere around there. And he was so upset about it that he tied a black band on his hat and wore it ever since because of the loss of his son. His son's name was William. He called him Willie. It was his beloved little son. And the hat, he wore the same hat on the night that he was assassinated in the theater. And it was sitting right next to him. And that hat is in the Smithsonian Museum in the United States. And if you look at the hat, it has both bands on it. So to this day, Abraham Lincoln's hat is still in mourning for the loss of his son, many, many years after his death. So there you are. All right. So let's talk a little bit. So I said the stovepipe is essentially just a taller top hat. What is a top hat? This thing. All right. So the top hat, by the mid-18th century, it was the preferred dress hat. If you had a formal occasion you needed to go to, and you were a man, that's important, you were a man, you wore a top hat, okay? So, normally, up until the start of the 1900s, they were beaver, and we'll get to that later. By the 1900s, they started to be silk, right? The top hat signifies wealth and being the upper part of society. Even though you had to have it for formal occasions, right? That's why it was very expensive. Was because it was necessary for formal occasion, but it was also to show people that you had money. So it was sort of difficult if you were a common person trying to be in politics, right? Because they were expensive. Up until 1953, all presidents wore the top hat to the presidential inauguration. Everyone know what an inauguration is? All right. Okay, look at this thing.
A beaver.
It's a beaver. They're so cute. I love beavers. Okay, so most top hats were made by beaver felt, which I've said. However, by the start of the 1900s, they were made with silk. All right, so felt. So when people think fur, they think like fluffy, you know. Felt is actually something similar to one of like this hat, right? So they take the fur, and I don't know how they process it, but they create kind of a fabric that's like this. So not actually fur, it's not fluffy, it's kind of this. This is actual beaver fur, by the way, so if you want to, you can, don't hurt it, but if you'd like to look and touch my hat, you can. It's my favorite, most prized hat, so be careful. All right. So, they were made by silk in the 1900s, like I said. Right now, there is no, the type of silk that they made with the felt, they don't make anymore, actually. They stopped making it in the 60s because there wasn't enough of a demand. A lot of the silk that you made the felt for came from France, which caused problems after World War II, but we will get there. All right. Okay, another important presidential figure. Who is this, Luke?
Oh, I don't know, but I think he looks sort of like a teddy bear.
He looks like a teddy bear, so therefore he is
Roosevelt.
Theodore Roosevelt. Yes, indeed. Who the teddy bear is named after? Did you guys know that?
Do they know what a teddy bear is?
Yes, do we know what a teddy bear is? It's a small stuffed animal bear that children have. Yes, a little toy. So, he, right, is our most, remembered probably as our most manly president, right? He was incredibly tough. He was in the Rough Riders, right, which is like this tough cavalry group, okay? And he wore his slope hat during the Spanish-American War, which started April 1898 to August 1898. So he fought, right, in the Spanish-American War. Okay, so what is a slope hat? This is essentially the closest that I have to a slope hat, right? So it's for military people who are in hot climates, right? Because it keeps the sun off your face. You can put both up, you can put one up, right? And so oftentimes he's photographed in this hat. He wanted to sort of portray the fact that he was, you know, served in the military, tough, horseback kind of man, right? And we often remember him in this hat. the top hat was what people wore their inauguration until 1953. This guy changed everything, right? So, does anyone know what kind of hat this is? If you do, I'll be impressed.
What are you felt hat?
It is a Homburg hat, but yes,
Ah.
it is felt. It's wool. His was wool felt. So the Homburg hat is not a top hat, as you can see, right? So it's a felt hat. This part's, a little bit tall, but not very tall. It's got a traditional Homburg hat has one dent in the middle. Okay. The closest thing I have to a Homburg, I don't own a Homburg, unfortunately. I've been looking for one, but I haven't found it. So is this, right? So imagine if these sides weren't pushed in, almost. This part is, and if this part was just a little bit taller, it would essentially be a Homburg hat. Okay, so he wore this to his inauguration. So he broke with tradition, which is understandable, but why? Why?
Looks more casual.
It looks more casual. Yeah, so it looks a little bit more casual. Okay, the Homburg by the 1950s was still considered a dressy hat, but not a formal hat. Right? So dressy, but not formal. Right? And so he wore it to his inauguration and surprised a lot of people by making that decision. This hat is also very, very popular with American gangsters. Right? It's also known as the gangster hat.